Hi everyone. Our today's lesson is about Robert Burns and his literary activity. We will discuss his two poems, A Red Red Rose and The Phone Keys, but of course we will know some major information about his literary activities, main themes, major topics, symbols, allegories and motifs of his poems. So here we have three main contents according to our syllabi. The first one is, Robert Burns as the greatest poet of the 18th century English literature and his literary activities. And the second one is main themes: love, regret, man and nature, then love of freedom, daily life of man, such kind of themes we will discuss in his poems, and especially in A Red Red Rose and The Fond Kiss. And the third topic is analysis of symbols, allegory, and motifs in A Red Red Rose, A Fond Kiss, and also a mouse, and so on. So let's get started. Robert Burns, the most democratic poet of the 18th century. So let's have some information about about himself. He was one of the most beloved writers in English literature, and one of the most quoted poets in the English language, though most of his poems in Scottish dialect are incomprehensible to many English speakers. You see in our upcoming slides that to understand his language so hard, you need some footnotes of some special words because they are in old English language and especially in Scottish dialect. And much of his work is nothing more than lyrics written to folk songs. Few of his writings broke any new ground in poetic techniques, and he used many of his turns of phrase, often cliches and slang of the day, over and over. I want to check that if it's recording or not. Yes, it's recording. So, um, and Robert Burns was the most democratic poet of the 18th century. His birthday is celebrated as a national holiday in Scotland, and Burns' poetry may be regarded as a treasure of all that is best in Scottish songs. And Robert Burns, national poet of Scotland, who wrote lyrics and songs in Scottish and in English. He was also famous for his amours and his rebellion against Orthodox religion and morality. Then here I chose some of his poems. Of course, you can easily search out on the Google and you can find many of his poems, but I just choose some of them, the most famous ones. Here we have the discussion of To a Mouse, A Red Red Rose, A Fond Kiss, and also poems chiefly in the Scottish dialect. So, major themes of his poems. The first one is love, because he employs the theme of love in A Red Red Rose and also in A Fond Kiss. In A Fond Kiss, the narrator is getting apart from her lover and wishing her for her future. These two poems describe love as deeper than anything else. And the second theme is a regression. Regret is another important theme in his poem, especially in A Fond Kiss. However, regretting is negative in the most sense, but the author uses it positively. In other words, the narrator is saying that pain is inevitable in love. If you love, you have to suffer from it. So it's his opinion. And the third main theme is man and nature. Being a poet of the Romantic era, Burns makes us to use of nature in prominent ways. The narrator describes the deepness of his love with the imagery of nature to express the freshness of her love. He begins the poem with the comparison of her lover with a flower rose. Of his lover, sorry, with the flower rose. Later, he declared that he will love her till the sea dry off or the rock melts. I will show you the original text in the upcoming slides. These descriptions of natural elements in the poem help the reader to understand the deepness of his love. And also we have some other themes of his poems. Other most characteristic themes of his poems are love of freedom, hatred for all oppressors, man's everyday work, then troubles, rest, joy, and love, the God qualities of the Scottish peasant, his rich and complex inner world, the Scottish history, folklore, and the beauty of his country. So, such kind of secondary themes are also important for his poems. And let's start with A Red, Red Rose. It's really one of the most famous poems of Robert Burns. So, in Robert Burns' A Red, Red Rose, the speaker bids farewell to his beloved and promises to return to her no matter his hardship. And the poem opens with the speaker comparing his beloved to a red rose and praising her beauty. And he declares that his love for her is so deep and everlasting that is will be survived until the sea dries up. And the promises that although he must leave, he will come back, even if he must travel 10,000 miles to do so. And let's look at the structure and analysis of this poem. A Red, Red Rose by Robert Burns is a poem that is in the ballad formation of 4-line stanzas with ABBA rhyme, and that format automatically links the reader to concepts of love and emotion. And the ABB rhyme, maybe you have some ideas about these rhyme schemes because you have learned the theory of literature. And with the addition of metaphors, similes, anaphoras, epiphoras, and such kind of figurative language elements describe the narrator's affection and the woman who holds that affection. The narrator attempts throughout the lines to express the depths of his love. And this could be a final reassurance to his dear, since the ending stanza reveals that he has to leave her for a while. But regardless of the reason, the main element of this work remains the love itself. And through repetitions, simile, metaphor, and structure, Burns has created a work that dives into her heart of this narrator's affection. The symbolic meaning of the poem is to convey the passion and intensity that is involved in being in love with someone. A theme could certainly be that there are many ways to redescribe one's love, many metaphors or ways of expression which help to clarify what is its meaning to be in love with someone. The tone of the poem is exalting of love, joyful of being in its presence, which mirrors the mood of enthusiasm and joy. In terms of the appreciation of the poem, I think anyone who believes in the power of love could appreciate much of what the poet employs here. However, there is one dilemma that is present. and there is little to indicate why there is an emotional connection present. We realize that the speaker is in love and they truly believe in the authenticity of this expression. However, I will explain with first stanza. There is little else to indicate that this love is spiritually or emotionally inclined. And as I said before, the structure of this poem is 4-line stanzas, and while the rhyme scheme varies in the first half and the second half, as you see here. And in the first two stanzas, the second and fourth lines, June and tune, are rhyming, and also we have here "Oh my love," "Oh my love." It's the repetition, and the kind of this repetition. The name of this repetition is anaphora because it's in the beginning of the sentence. And a red, red rose is the metaphor that is using to describe the beauty of his beloved. And here, last two stanza, the rhyme pattern features the second and fourth lines rhyming again. We have second stanza and third stanza. Here also we have second and fourth lines are rhyming. And this helps to create a rhythmic and song-like quality to the poem. The surface meaning is about a speaker who is naturally in love. The speaker uses several examples of figurative language to relay the relevancy of love. For example, the opening line and title compares love to a red, red rose. And this simile brings forth the mental picture of vibrancy and intensity as it links one's love to a traditional flower of love, the rose. And let's start to analyze the first stanza. Without question, this first stanza expresses the core focus of the poem, which is for the narrator to declare his affection for his love. That the endearment of love is capitalized gives the title a higher level of significance than what a lowercase concept would address. As if this title is a proper name attached to the person. The reader does not need to know the name of this lady. The nickname is sufficient to distinguish who this person is to the narrator. And the spelling of the word love, so it's an Old English L-U-V-E, is less modern than as well, which takes this concept into historical era. That tragedy elevates the amount of romance that is a part of the situation. From that, even if this poem were written today, the language would reach back into those older times to restore it outdated and but appreciated concepts of love and romance. And what the narrator has to say about his love is that she's like a red, red rose, as a rose is the flower most connected to romance, love, and sweethearts. And this is a strong simile. In addition, red is seen as a color of passion. So as you see here, we have two reds. A red, red rose. So we have two red, and I will explain the main reason why this poet poet used it. And red is seen as a color of passion, so to attribute that color to the rose twice in a row deposits a hefty amount of passion to the romance, so much that the color must be repeated. Beyond the concept of the rose, the narrator relates his love to the newly sprung in June, and the melody, "Oh My Love," is like the melody, sweetly played in tune. That's sweetly played in tune, the last line. This indicates the relationship is so refreshing that the feels renewed through it like a summer day, and the song is in his life because of his love that is sweet and perfect. These ideas are highly relevant to the ballad formation of this poem because they are obvious connections to things that are linked with romantic love. With every new idea brought to the stanza, it seems the narrator is searching for a means to address the fullness of his love. And second stanza, so fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till the sea gang dry. So here we have the second and fourth lines are rhyming. And deep in love, I will love thee still, and seas gang dry. I will explain the meaning of these expressions. The second stanza begins by stepping back from addressing the narrator's feelings and actions to complement his bonny lass. So here we have bonny lass. For being so fair. So it's just description of appearance of his love, of his beloved. And once that compliment is set in stone, the narrator returns to his own feelings by clearly stating that he is so deep in love. And it's noteworthy that love in this line is no longer capitalized. So, as you see, the previous we have love with a capital letter, and the second we see that it's not in a capital letter, and potentially because it's used as a verb rather than a noun to address the woman he cares for. And so deep in love, it means I love you deeply, and that's why it's not written with a capital letter. And that differentiation could be an indication that the woman is more significant than the actual action of love, as if the only reason he is able to experience this grandness of emotions is because of her. For any other person, then the love would be less significant. From there, the narrator declares he will love her still. I will love thee still. So thee is an old English, it means you. I will love you still, so I will love thee still. Seas gang dry. This is a clever way of saying his affection for her, for his beloved, will continue forever, and as strong as that declaration is, the narrator feels sure of it, so is sure of his love to that woman. This could be because his love itself is as deep as the seas, and just as they will not dry up, he knows for certain his love will continue as well. His love will not die till the end of his life too. And one final thing, verse nothing in this stanza is that the narrator utilizes a new term of endearment for his love, and that's dear. Here have my dear, and this term however remains a lowercase in a low level mm, simile, perhaps because it's not a strong enough noun to fully represent his affection for this woman. It must be love to successfully address it, and only once it's addressed to that full extent does it full extent it merit capitalization. And even it would be written in a capital letter, or instead of dear, if he wrote love or beloved, it would be more impressive that my dear. So otherwise any term of endearment will fall short and merit lowercase lettering. And about the rhyming, as I said before, we have second and fourth lines are rhyming here, but there is no any rhyming between first and third lines. And another thing, let's, no, I think, yes, we have to discuss the third stanza. So we have here, my dear, my dear. Some students say that it's rhyming, but it's the type of repetition. It's epiphora, when the same word is repeating at the end of the sentence, at the end of the line. We call it epiphora. So here we had on my love, on my, oh my love, or oh my love. It's anaphora because it's repeated in at the beginning of the sentence lines, and here it's epiphora. And the second and fourth lines are rhyming, and it's fully rhymed because it's just one syllable and they are rhyming, so they are overlapping. So the narrator begins this third stanza by repeating the idea that he will love her till the seas gang dry, and adds in the repeated environment of my dear. So we had it here, my dear, and again we had my dear in the third stanza. This reveals how strongly the narrator feels about this concept, and how desperate he is to ensure that his beloved understands how long his affection will endure. In a poem that is only 16 lines, repeating information severely limits the ideas the poet can address. So to spend so much time on this one concept highlights how relevant and important it's to the narrator. From there, the narrator continues with his declarations of how long his love will survive, specifically addressing rocks melt with the sun. It's you know that it's impossible. It's almost hyperbole because a rock is not melting, and even if the how to say the sunlight are so strong, rocks cannot melt. So here he uses the hyperbole to express the power of his love, and this indicates as long as the world continues as it is, and so long as the sands of life allow him to exist, he will love this woman. Interestingly, the spelling of the word love has changed in this stanza to a modern. So here we see that it's love. Oh, sorry. We see that love is in Old English L-U-V-E, but here in the third stanza we see it's a modern love. So this in itself could represent the long reach of his affection, that it is both historic and modern, past, present, and future. Overall, the narrator wants the vastness of his love to be revealed, and the language does a remarkable job of doing just that. And fourth stanza, we also have here, we have anaphora and fare thee will and fare thee will. So it's repeating at the beginning of the lines. It's another type of repetition, and also we have rhyming here. I colored the rhyming lines with the same color, so you can easily understand that love is not rhyming with heil. So love and love, and here while and mile. So isle and isle, they are rhyming. So it's not fully rhymed. It's half rhyme, and the poem does not address why. It's evident in these four stanzas that the narrator must leave his love. It's verse nothing that the spelling of the word has returned to the more historic form, but also that he is addressing his love in lowercase letters in this stanza. So here we again see that love in with the Old English spelling, and again it's written with not a capital letter, it's written with a little letter. And what this could indicate is that by leaving his love must be set aside, and that lower level of the priority is showcased in that lowercase approach. Whatever reason this narrator must leave, he does not go without reassuring his love that he will come again, even though 10,000 miles separate them. The pairing of the plural, so 10,000 mile. The pairing of the plural 10,000 with the singular mile can be seen as evidence that the length of the distance separating them does not matter. Whether it's multiple miles or only one, the narrator is certain he will return to his love. That determination is yet another indication of how deeply his love runs, as is the repeated notion of fare thee well. So, and as was already noted before, repeating concepts in such a brief poem is a serious decision, since so much of the poem is then represented in a handful of words that his parting words include the advice or the plead for her to be well highlights how much he wishes her to fare well during his absence. And this shows a level of caring beyond what he experiences when she is physically near. Though the love must be put aside for a while, the narrator's affection still remains, and the depth of that affection is the key element of this poem. So, if you have some other explanation or analysis or approach to this poem, I'm really glad to hear your opinions for our seminar. And let's skip to our second poem. It's a phone kiss. So here a is in Old English, it's the article a, indefinite article. So a fond kiss, it's also another famous poem by Robert Burns. I have written here three main interesting information about this poem. So, a fond kiss is a three-stanza poem that is separated into sets of 8 lines or octaves. Each of these octaves is composed of couplets or 2-line pairs. The rhymes are very consistent. The only point at which the rhyme changes is between lines 3 and 4 of the second stanza. I will show you in the upcoming slides this rhyming scheme. The end sounds her and forever are half or slant rather than full rhymes. Burns also created a very structured pattern for the meter. It conforms to iambic tetrameter. This means that each line contains 4 sets of 2 beats. The first of these is unstressed and the second stressed. Burns' poetry is immediately recognizable due to his choice to write in a Scottish dialect. This means that there is often some interpreting of phrases that must occur before a piece can be fully understood. The poem is commonly referred to as a song. Burns intended for it to be set to music. And on YouTube you can search out a phone kiss as a song, and also Red Red Rose too. So analysis of the poem A Phone Kiss. Let's look at the first stanza. So here again I colored the rhyming lines. Sever, forever, so ever, ever, they are rhyming. Then they are rhyming, and also they are calling epiphora. Then him. Sorry, I didn't color because they are rhyming together. Grieves him, leaves him. So eaves him, it's also rhyming. And lights me, benights me. Lights me and nights me, they are rhyming. And we don't have here any anaphora. You see that there is not any repetition at the beginning of the sentence. And about the analysis of this first stanza, you can easily see that Robert Burns tells us the unfortunate parting of two lovers and the speaker's depression over the many parts of his life he is losing. The poem begins with the speaker bidding his lover farewell and at the same time mourning her departure. He has a dark despair inside of him that cannot be touched by light. And he does not regret this relationship, even though sometimes he's troubled over it. Any action he took with this person was not his fault. He couldn't resist her. Burns concludes the poem with the speaker talking through all the positive themes his lover brought to him. From peace to pleasure, he has not come to terms with the loss by the end. Instead, the first lines of the poem are repeated to create circular lyrics. So, in the first stanza here, this piece, the speaker begins by utilizing the line that later became the title, a fond kiss. So the first expression of the first line is a title, and this is one of the interesting moments where a little interpretation of the dialect is helpful. In this context, a simple means a, as I said before, or only one. And the speaker is telling his listener that now is the time for them to part. They shared one final, fond, and loving kiss and severed their connection. It's interesting to note that this poem, in a way, stands in for that kiss. It was sent from Burns to his ex-lover after she returned to her husband. The next two lines tell the listener, so here, what has been and will be going on inside the speaker's heart. He is conflicted over the end of the relationship and perhaps conflict about its existence at all. He speaks to the varying varying sighs and groans. I will wage thee, and the speaker continues on state that he is wrung out with grief. There is a dark despair that follows him everywhere and is working to take him over. There is no cheerful twinkle of hope to raise his spirits. Everything they had together is over. And there is an interesting contrast in these last lines between the darkness within the speaker and the light he knows could exist. This might be part of these general feelings of conflict. He knows he could be happier, but is plowed by the despair. So the second stanza, again I color the rhyming. But also we have here, had we never loved thee kindly, had we never loved thee blindly. Here we have anaphora on fifth and sixth lines. And also we have fancy Nancy, they are rhyming her, love her forever, just as last syllable is rhyming, so it's not complete, not fully rhymed, it's half rhymed. And kindly, blindly, it's fully rhymed. Parted, hearted, it's fully rhymed because all the syllables are overlapping. And the analysis of the second stanza makes The second stanza makes great use of repetition, as I said before. Burns begins by telling the listener that whatever has happened between them and whatever is going on inside his heart is not his fault. He will never blame his own passion. And another thing, there is no way to resist the listener when she's there. The next lines tell of how simple it was to love this person and remain in love with her. Once he saw her, it was love and love forever. Love and love forever. So here, but to see her was to love her, love but her, and love forever. And the speaker uses parallel syntax in the next lines with the phrase, had we never loved, say. He's setting up a possible alternate reality in which the two never met one another and never loved. In the first instance, the phrase ends with kindly. So here you see, kindly. They might not have had their kind love, or as the second line describes, blind love, so blindly. In other world, they might have never met or never parted. In both of these other realities, they would not have ended up with broken hearts. And the third stanza, it's the last stanza. Again, we have parallelism, fare thee will, and I colored again the rhyming lines, rhyming words. Fairest, dearest, treasure, pleasure, sever, ever, I will pledge thee, I will wait thee. So, I will, they are not fully rhymed, just edge thee is the rhyming. And the meaning of this stanza is another instance of parallel syntax at the beginning of the final stanza here. He bids his love farewell, alternatively calling her fairest and the dearest. It's clear that this person was everything to the speaker. He confirms this in line 3 by stating that she is both joy and treasure. Joy and treasure. And she is made out of all the good in his life and brought to him peace, enjoyment, love, and pleasure. So, this fourth line. And with knowledge of the historical context in which this piece was written, one can't help but feel sorry for Burns, who obviously treasured this relationship. It does not seem like he was ready to sever their ties at all. In the final 4 lines, he repeats the beginning of the poem, a fond kiss, and then we sever, a farewell, Alice, forever. So a fond kiss and then we sever. So it's the first line of the stanza, the first line of the poem. And he tells the listener that they have shared their final kiss. He also claims that all these emotions are coming from deep in hard-wrung tears. And the tears are devoted to this person and represent everything they once had and have now lost. So we learned analysis and the structure of 2 poems by Robert Burns, but also we have symbols, allegory, and motifs, analysis of these kinds of elements in these slides. So the mouse, nest, melody, red rose, lion, and prey. Here we have the first symbol to a mouse. Let's look here. I'm truly sorry, man's dominion. Again, I colored dominion, union, opinion, and companion. So you see here, neon, they are rhyming. It's also not fully rhymed. And the nest to a mouse. The nest here. We have the mouse's nest. epitomizes a portion of nature that has been dented by man. So here is written, I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union, and justify that it ill opinion which makes thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion. Both man and mice are mortal, but man is more prevailing. Man's preeminence is detrimental to the mice, as it backs the meddling with the mice's domicile. And the second motif is melody. We learned the red, red rose. Here is written that all my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. So the emblematic melody relates to the synchronization of the love. And in these lines, the love is amiably and symphonic, that is, assures supreme efficacy to the lovers. And also red rose is also the symbol. All my life is like a red, red rose. So you know this first line. The duplication of red accentuates the immensity, the speaker's passion. The redness infers that the love is unduly vehement. And line and pray, it's in the address to the devil in this poem. We have here line and trine. It's also half rhymed. And sorry. Here Robert Burns talks to Satan, devil, and to the roaring lion embodies Satan, whereas the prey characterizes the souls, individuals that devil is endeavoring to gulp through his scheming methodologies. So they are the main themes and motifs of his poems. Of course, I chose just some of them, but you can widen this list, and you can prepare your seminar according to your own approach. Maybe you know another poem by Robert Burns and you want to analyze them, but be sure that these two poems, Fond Kiss and Red Red Rose, will be your exam questions. So none of other poems. I will just give you the questions about these two poems. That's why pay attention to learn and discuss their analysis. So for the next lesson, we will have the seminar, and please I would like you to discover another meanings and analysis of the poem, not just to learn by heart what's written in our video lesson and PPT. Please try to think critically and try to criticize what's written in the poem and try to analyze by yourself. And thanks for watching. See you next time on our seminar. So, goodbye.